All right, so because we made Mary and Tom travel, we are gonna make the best use of them again. We're gonna call them back on stage. We're gonna have a little conversation with me as well, just to squeeze more juices out of their brain. So Tom and Mary, if you wanna join me back on stage. Wait. All right. Should I say what I had for breakfast? You want me to buy some times? I had a lovely toast with smoked turkey and cheddar. What you guys had for breakfast? More?
Yes, please.
We're ready.
You coming up?
Right? Shall we go? Yeah, okay.
Let's come. Ladies first, and then me and Tom will fight
Right.
for the seat.
You want me?
Actually,
That's
you
like-
want to match the
I want
photos?
this.
I thought we're doing that.
We're doing that, so I'll just sit in the middle then.
Okay.
All right, so I think let's go immediately into brand and performance. I want to understand how marketeers in 2026 can bridge that gap. Mary, you talked about a bit as well. Tom as well. You went into the power of brand. What is still misunderstood based on your conversation on that tension between brand and performance?
Do you want me to go?
Yeah, go
I
on.
mean, even before you get to the tension, there is a whole world of marketers that don't realize there's a tension because they don't even believe in brand to start with.
Right.
So there's a whole American, predominantly kind of tech world thing, which is brand is either not believed in, or brand is a luxury, or brand is something you just add a little bit in. So even before the more sophisticated view, which is it's a balance, it's both this, it's trying to get the two working in harmony, there is an absolute enormous world of marketing people who don't even understand the real basics, which is kind of worrying, I think.
And you've been working in the industry for a while without making numbers, and shame on your experience. What are those conversation and topics that help these people understand? Like, you must be a converter as well,
Yeah.
right? You must have in this conversation. You're an advocate for brand, so I myself. Yeah. What did you learn to help people appreciate the power of brand?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's a huge amount of learning and theory and data and understanding that is available to people. My favorite, and that's of course one way that people can become converts. There was an interesting conversation on LinkedIn yesterday where somebody had shared an article I wrote about 6 years ago, and they said, "Oh, this was the first thing they read," and then they got into it was called "The Wrong and the Short of It." I wrote this thing, which was really a kind of a précis, a summary of the long and the short of it, which is by Burnett and Field. And so there's a huge body of UK, Australia, New Zealand kind of creative effectiveness theory, which is available to any marketer and is out there. That's helpful to people, but it doesn't seem to always get through, particularly to the performance-minded kind of marketing world in the US, which is it's slow to change. But what I do see is, I think the biggest U-turn actually in advertising history was by Amazon, where you had Jeff Bezos saying he didn't believe in advertising at all. Advertising is a tax on a bad product, which was, I think, a kind of dot-com bubble era perspective. But Amazon learned from its own data that advertising works, and it then learned from its own data that brand advertising works. And they became one of the biggest Super Bowl advertisers. And they developed their own enormous advertising ecosystem, including brand advertising and performance marketing.
Yeah.
So I think you have to learn from your own data, and it has to come from leadership. It has to come from the top, or you just have individual teams kind of banging their heads against walls.
Yeah.
So it comes from the top, a sort of leadership perspective and vision, and then re-education of a company, restructure, organization of how marketing works within an organization, people being KPI'd properly. Sorry, long answer.
So no, I think very good. Mary, what is the problem with data? Is it the marketeers are looking at the wrong data, or brand people are not looking at data at all?
I think the biggest problem is that we generally like opposing forces in marketing. So we like to take a side, and it's Tom Collins who talks about this. He refers to this as the tyranny of or, rather than the tediousness of the end. Yeah. But more so in marketing, we We like that. I don't know if it's because we like a dialogue very much, but the reality is that we find the truth and we stick by it and we go, right, this is what I'm going to do. And then there's another truth that is being validated because the data points to it, and then everyone runs behind that truth. But both truths can actually coexist. And in fact, these two things that you mentioned, you know, brand building and performance marketing, actually work better when they are in harmony. This is when you see the greatest impact now and in the future. Let's go for harmony and the geniusness of the end rather than chasing one.
What would you say is the root cause of this friction, of this competition versus collaboration then? Does it come from academia, or is it the business mindset? Is it the C-suite mentality? Based on your experience, why can we not hold hands and we have to go brand versus performance?
Well, you know, I mentioned this in the presentation. Humans tend to gravitate towards what's easier to measure,
numbers,
and faster to track, right? But the reality is that if you go for one of those, and you usually go for the easier to track, the fastest to change, then you become a slave to it. You become short-sighted, and then it's very hard to come out of this. You know, you start investing in performance marketing, let's say, and then your optimization will always push you towards putting more money behind it because you sell more when you have coupons, but what do? Do you always use coupons? It's sweet for as long as it lasts, but it's not like durable.
Yeah.
But I think that in marketing specifically, it's very hard, it's very hard to draw conclusions. The things we're looking at to draw conclusions from are increasingly hard to draw conclusions from. So more than anything else, we just need to take into account a number of different things and allow for ourselves to be open-minded and allow for ourselves to consider that what we knew until now is true, but other paths actually exist, right? Yeah. It's not as if we don't agree with the previous path anymore, but we allowed for another path to actually coexist in our pursuit of data.
And it's not a new dichotomy. It's something that's existed from the very first sort of early 20th century, the strong force versus the weak force of advertising. There were people in the kind of DM, direct marketing world, a guy called Claude Hopkins, who really believed in measurement and data and measuring things very immediately. I think this, and you fast forward to the kind of modern world, the digital platforms, it's incredibly addictive when you've got immediate data, which appears to be telling you you're doing the right things. The problem is some of those right things in the immediate short term are not the right things in the long term.
Yeah.
So you do need a longer term perspective, and you need people working together, not fighting each other. So you have to have a harmonious view of the whole system, and not a kind of, because ultimately, if you only look at the data that you've got in front of you, you'll always pile more and more money into the short term, because that's where the ROIs are strong.
100%.
And it's easy to measure that stuff.
But it's addictive. It's like a sugar rush, right? Today I put $1, tomorrow I get $2. I get it. Even the most clueless CFO or CEO will get it. I put 1, I get 2. I love it.
I'll do it again.
Let's do it forever.
Right. And finance teams get addicted to it, and it becomes once you've got ROAS targets that finance people are demanding, it's incredibly hard to unpick in an organization. So that needs to be unpicked by a leader who comes in and says, no, this is killing the brand in the long term.
Yeah,
100%. And I think one of the conversations that people struggle to appreciate is the fact that how much more powerful a brand is, much easier sales get as well. There is that rule that we're talking about, the 95.5 versus 5% rule, which is like at any given time, your ideal customer is not ready to purchase, right? Only 5% probably today have the desire of a new car, for example, right? I wish you all to buy a new car every year, but most of us normal people, what is it, 5 years? 10 years, but once that demand arises, we already kind of know which supplier we want, right? So that those brands manage to have that long-term positioning, we want that brand, not the others. Mary, I want to go into the other tensions. What are those signals earlier on that we can match with longer-term signal as well?
Right.
So how do we match short-term signal, long-term signals.
Yeah, that balance, you need the balance. That balance you're talking about is very important because one of the greater challenges that brand managers have is, they struggle to break free from a biased measurement system. But if you have both, the short-term indicators and the longer-term indicators, then you win. What you need is to have, yes, your share of wallet, shares, but also share of mind, right? So when we're talking about short-term signals, we're talking about, let's say, branded search content, right? The volume, right? And we're talking about sentiment on social media. We're talking about how your campaign is landing. So brand awareness and indicators that can tell you what I'm doing right now, it's actually resonating with people very well.
Yeah.
But then for the longer term, for what's happening in the mind, you need a brand measurement system that will allow you to get indicators, longer term indicators like brand equity. So I had a few there on the slide where we're talking about meaningfulness, so whether you meet people's needs, whether you connect with them emotionally and functionally, but we are salience, top of mind during a time of purchase, differentiation, whether you stand out, okay. But then out of the powers, I'm going to single out pricing power. So that is, let's say, one indicator you can have. That is one of those indicators that allows you to know that you've got a very good brand because you have, you put your brand up, you put your price up rather, but people are still going to buy you because they believe you're worth it.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, because I went on for too long, you need share of wallet, sales, and you need share of mind. Some kind of brand equity, right? And a brand equity metric, like pricing power or demand power, or one of those that tells you how much value is being accumulated in people's minds.
And Tom, we talked about a lot about consistency and the power of repetition, but we also know that there are business changes that happen in this company, right? New CEO, new CMO, and they always have an appetite for change as well. So can you help us understand the friction between creative freedom and consistency as well? So how in your work that you guys do manage to keep those two in balance?
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, I think the thing I try and represent is this sort of there is this body of idealistic purist theory, which tends to talk about consistency a lot and kind of purity and singularity, whereas the reality of businesses is often really, really messy, and you'll have a company with a master brand or multiple brands. Each brand will have multiple products. Each product or each brand needs to be speaking in multiple channels. Time changes, personnel changes, trends are changing. So things are moving all the time. So how you balance those two things? I think it's a little bit like, to use the sort of the musical analogy. It's a bit like orchestrating music, kind of taking all these little pieces, all these little notes, trying to create harmony, trying to create consistency of themes and leitmotifs into a symphony. So you're having to respond and react. It's not enough to be completely purist and completely strategically inflexible.
Yeah.
You need kind of different horizons. Really, really fixed view of your positioning, which isn't going to change. A more flexible view of the brand ideas or campaign ideas or communications ideas you're using, and an incredibly flexible and reactive view of all the tactics you're going to be deploying.
Yeah.
So it's a sort of, it's a system.
Yeah. So having a center pillar that gives you the confidence to react quickly, proactively to changes, but still staying consistent to what you really are, who
Absolutely.
really are.
And a really strong piece of brand strategy thinking, I think, I would say that because I'm a brand strategist, as you, I think, sits at the heart of all of this.
Yeah.
Whereas so much of what we think we're doing with strategy, particularly when in agency world, you can get into creative strategy, which is much more impermanent, more flexible. So I'm a big believer in kind of really solid, single, organizing ideas at the heart of everything.
How do you guys feel about this AI shift? I mean, we got a mention, right, from the data perspective or from the brand perspective. What is your personal feel in it?
Well, in this specific case, for what we were just talking about, it can be your friend, and Tom was talking about it earlier on in his presentation. So, because we have many more touch points, it can help you understand whether you are actually staying consistent across those touch points, and actually tell you early on whether you are deviating. And when it comes to monitoring and tracking, it can be your friend as well, right? Because it can be there to do that. And then you have, by having an early alert system, you can have the confidence, or your team rather, can feel empowered to know that they're consistent, but then be creative within the boundaries of the main core idea that you've set from the very beginning. So in that sense, it can actually be your friend. But
what are the risks then? When does it become an enemy?
Well, it's you need to use your brain. I think the risk is that we are expecting too much, or some laziness comes into this as well.
Yeah.
So as long as we remember that the guiding force is still our human brain, despite the fact that it can actually produce, it can model, it can make the decisions, stay there behind it, make sure it's doing it right.
It's scary, because as humans, we do get comfortable sometimes.
Absolutely.
Bluff, send. I mean, there was a 500,000 report done by Deloitte, completely using AI and sold to the Australian government, and someone started to go and check the research, and the quotations were fake, the people were non-existing, the data was wrong. So someone just said, I'm going to trust it blindly, and give it up to that, and there was a whole huge scandal in that.
Yes, and I bet they used AI to check the data too.
Yes, AI telling AI, it's all good, mate.
You got it wrong.
Ship it out.
So it can be costly because it was millions and millions.
And imagine the brand damage. I think Deloitte will recover, and it's such a huge organization. But like for the normal brands of us, once you've done this PR
Absolutely.
shitstorm, it's gonna be tricky.
Yeah.
And Tom, from the creative and the brand building perspective, or even the brand strategy perspective, then how does AI fit into your mindset?
Yeah, so the thinking's developing, of course, but what we're seeing is we have a new audience for our content and our creativity.
Robots.
And they're reading our ads, as you said, and we've got a whole new, essentially, kind of marketing discipline emerging.
Yeah.
Which is more. I mean, it's kind of akin to the SEO world. We call it GEO, Generative Engine Optimization, and that's linked to Generative Engine Marketing. So there's a whole. If we've got this new audience in the models, we need to be. And what we're talking about is share of model. So how is your brand showing up in the models? How is your brand being represented by them in AI overviews and in conversational AI? And in how agents are going to be thinking about your brands and recommending your brands. So, but of course, that share of model doesn't exist outside in an isolation from share of mind. So we've essentially got kind of, let's call it mental availability in the Aerobas world, and model availability. And those two things interact. And so we're going to be needing to create communications and brand positioning, brand strategy and communications content that speaks to both humans and LLMs, and has both the characteristics that are really appealing to humans, so attention-grabbing, useful, helpful, entertaining, rewarding, and the qualities that the LLMs like, which tends to be sort of ordered and clear and consistent.
Correct.
What both like is consistency. So both of them really, really like brands to show up in a consistent way. So I think we're going to see really interesting developments where people will make campaigns for both audiences. You might see people making campaigns that are particularly attuned to develop conversation on Reddit, for example, because Reddit is a big source of LLM data. So that is going to be really interesting when we start to think about this as a new audience.
Yeah, and also from the research perspective, you mentioned Reddit. There are lots of really cool tools with AI now that scan Reddit in real time. And back in the days, we had to do on-field research with focus group and go and talk people. Now, 5 seconds, you have 5,000 answers, and you have the sentiment of people, how people on Reddit feel about the specific topic. Like, it's an overdose of possibilities.
So we've got, there's a whole world of AI tools that we're able to use for the inputs into marketing.
Yeah.
So whether that's synthetic data or
Yeah.
some really interesting people doing like segmentation studies with synthetic data. And the creative outputs are now, vastly assisted by AI, and the outcomes are going to be measured by AI,
Yeah.
and they're going to be, some of the outcomes will be things like share of model.
Yeah.
So it affects every single stage of the marketing process.
Yeah. Do you think AI is ready to draft a full brand strategy?
It can do you one. It's ready to do you an okay one. I mean, you can literally, with the tool that we use, Springboards, you can just put the brand name in. If you're going to be lazy, you can just put the brand name in the market and say, this is the brand, give us a strategy. It won't be a very good strategy. You need a human to push it further, to really probe it. You need to make sure you're using human judgment. And of course, we need to make sure we're not just giving up all of our critical thinking.
Yeah.
So if you want to do, you can do everything at a press of a button. You can do better with AI and really good humans as well. So
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting how people will make choices. There's a whole spectrum of purely AI to purely human, and the market will tell us what works best. Anybody that stands up and says, I'm not going to use AI to write copy, I think is probably burying their head in the sand. But anybody that says all brands are going to be autonomous next month is obviously full of shit. So, it's always going to be a balance. Come back to both.
Yeah. It's also tricky to have AI telling people what they need to do and what they need to believe as well. I think a lot of the brand building is also having the internal brand working together, right? Getting the buy-in of everyone involved.
Yeah, and I think if you see jobs and careers as simply tasks, then of course AI can take things over because it can do tasks. But actually, jobs are and the world of work and the processes it's much more about human interaction, and it's a much more sophisticated system than simply here's a tool to do a task.
Yeah.
I can see a world in which we are senior people orchestrating tasks and using AI to do all of those things.
Yeah.
I worry about junior people. I worry about training of young people. I worry about how we bring younger people into this as an industry. Who knows where this is going? But it's only going one way. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not.
But you're excited about it, yeah?
Yeah,
You're positive.
hugely
Absolutely.
excited. Yeah.
Mary, you also?
Absolutely, yes. As long as we keep that balance there, right?
Yeah. And last question before I let you go, you actually mentioned the young people. If you were given the magic power, or to control the agenda of what youngsters are studying or doing, or what skills that they are developing to go into this career, branding and marketing, where would you focus the most, Mary?
Well, should the youngsters focus more?
Yeah.
But we're not talking about AI only.
No, whatever, or maybe
Keep
what
an
would
open
you
mind,
have
yeah.
liked to get into earlier when you were studying?
It might be that the best advice I can give right now is to keep an open mind and do not get stuck in one idea. So that sometimes, and it's funny because we were spending a lot of your LinkedIn delegate yesterday in the taxi and earlier on today, and sometimes we follow people that are not necessarily expressing or gradually change their views, and we change with them and we follow what they say, but we don't necessarily explore more beyond that. So I would say, whatever you do, keep that spectrum wide. Yes, use platforms like LinkedIn or Reddit, your library of
But
things.
don't get stuck into one
Don't
thing.
get stuck into one thing. Keep
Yeah.
an open mind and try to bring that balance into your thinking as well. Whenever you are, yes, be inquisitive and be, curious about things, but make sure that you are inclusive in your thinking so that it grows. Yes.
Yeah. And it's funny because it contrasts a bit that niche mentality, do one thing only. But I think where the market is going, and you're absolutely right, like you need to have a more of like a generalist perspective and try to explore more and have an open mindedness because things are changing so quickly.
Yeah. Yes.
And Tom, from the brand strategy and creative perspective, what would you say to people in uni?
I mean, I think it would be don't ignore the traditional skills, the fundamental principles, and for a young person coming into the industry, try and head upstream. So what I can see from where I'm sitting is people evolving their careers and their job roles so that they're kind of getting up and ahead of the tools and the platforms they're using. So don't get stuck in one individual platform or one individual specific executional area.
Yeah.
Try and get into a more strategic upstream area because that's going to be more rewarding in the long term and more protected in the long term.
Yeah, it's less about pixel pushing and doing things, more about the creative problem solving, you know, that is a craft that will stay with you all life. Yeah, absolutely agree. Guys, thank you very much for your time. Lovely having you.
Pleasure.
Thank
you.
Thank you.